Slow motion video will almost always boost your production value because it looks so cool, but only if you do it right. Now, a key factor in getting good slow motion in your video is selecting the right frame rate. And your frame rate is how many frames is in each second of your video. And this is called frames per second, denoted as FPS. Now, a frame is literally just a still image. So your videos are just multiple images or pictures playing in a sequence. So your frame is one image and your rate is how many of those images in 1 second. Most cameras today start with a base frame rate of 24 frames per second. And here are the options that I have on my camera. So I'm in my camera shooting menu and I'm going under movie settings. And here you'll see I have frame size / frame rate. And that's what I want. So I have 1920 by 1080 at 60p. And the numbers with the P at the end are what we're looking at. So this means 60 frames per second. The one below that, 30p, 30 frames per second. 24 frames per second, and we have another 60 and another 30. So as you can see, there are various frame rate options that you can choose from on your camera, and these frame rate options affect your videos in two ways. The first way is the look and feel of your video. Most movies are filmed in 24 frames per second because it gives it that filmic look with that natural motion blur, and it is said that human beings see in 24 frames per second, so that looks more natural to the eye. TV shows, game shows, talk shows, and the news you watch are mostly filmed in 30 frames per second because that is the television broadcasting standard, and that gives it the video look. And the second way your frame rate will affect your footage is how much you're able to manipulate that footage to get smooth flowing slow motion. So following with our TV and movie examples earlier, the standard for broadcasting sports is much higher at 300 frames per second because there's just so much slow motion required for like instant replays and just making sure that the plays in sports are legal and it wasn't a foul. And on that note of slow motion, the higher up in frame rates your camera is able to go, the more dynamic your slow motion capabilities will be, whether you're editing that footage or just playing it back. If I'm shooting a video like this that I'm just sitting and talking and I know I'm not going to require slow motion in my edit, I'll shoot it at 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second. But if I know I'm going to want to slow something down when I'm editing, I'm going to film that particular scene in a higher frame rate just to get that smooth, sweet slow motion. And an example of this would be some B-roll in a music video or a bride getting ready and she's putting on her earring and I know I'm going to edit that to some nice, slow, lovey-dovey music, then yes, I'll shoot that in a higher frame rate. And sometimes I'll shoot an entire project in a high frame rate just because I don't know when I'm going to want to slow something down when I'm editing. So it's always something to think about before you start shooting. Do I want to slow this down in my edit? No. Okay, let me shoot a standard frame rate. Or yes, so let me shoot a higher frame rate to get that sweet slow motion. Because if you shoot in 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second and then try and slow it down, it won't look smooth. It will look jittery and just jumpy, and it just doesn't look good. So I recorded some videos at different frame rates and we're gonna slow them down and then see what gives us the best results. I'm at 24 frames per second at 40% playback speed, and you can already see that the footage is just jittery and not very smooth. Now I'm at 30 frames per second, still very jittery, so I wouldn't recommend it. And in this third clip, I was at 60 frames per second. And the reason why I'm at 40% is because 40% of 60 frames per second is 24 frames per second. So I applied that same formula to each of these clips. That way you can see the true effect of what will happen when you choose to shoot at a particular frame rate. And you can see that this one is so slow and nice. That is all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're all excited to add slow motion to your projects because now you know how to do it right. Once again, my name is Cjam and I will see you guys in the next video.